Damn Regirock. Regirock is undeniably the hardest boss in Legendary Arena, and today I'll be showing you how to beat Regirock in the very hard difficulty with free-to-play sync pairs and minimum move candies. So let's move on to Regirock's default mechanics. Regirock starts with +6 defense and cannot be debuff unless you get a critical hit on him. And this applies to you as well. Whenever an ally or opponent receives a critical hit, the defense is lowered. Next, let's move on to his HP mechanics. For his first HP bar, he starts with Grass Weakness, and every time he sinks, he gets critical hit next and +1 defense. At 50% HP, he uses Iron Defense, which gives +2 defense and critical shield, which prevents critical hits. For his second HP bar, he starts with Steel Weakness, gets +1 accuracy and critical hit next, and starts with Rock Slide most of the time. He also gains Satisfied Snarl, which causes his attacks to reduce special attack by 1 each time his regular moves hit. Also, every time he sinks, he gets +1 accuracy, +1 defense, and -4 attack for your team, as well as Sync Cure, so he gains immunity to his afflicted status. He also gets Lesson Interference 3, which increases his resistance to volatile statuses each time he recovers from them. So for example, he has Inert Lesson Flinch 8, so once he recovers, he gets Unflappable and becomes immune to flinch. At 50% HP, he gets +1 critical hit rate. Besides that, if you start the battle in the midst of his second HP bar, you get -4 attack and -4 special attack from the start, and Regirock gets Status Condition Shield from the start as well. So you will need a damage dealer with Headstrong, Dauntless or Impervious here to prevent damage debuffs for attack, special attack or all stats respectively. For his third HP bar, he gets critical hit next. Also, every time he downs your Pokemon, he gets critical hit next. And at 50% HP, he gets +1 attack and +1 defense. If you start the battle midway for his third HP bar, Regirock starts with this Condition Shield. And that's the end of Regirock's HP mechanics. Next, let's delve into his moves. Regirock uses low damage moves for his first HP bar. For his second HP bar, he starts using high damage moves like Stone Edge and Drain Punch. And for his third HP bar, he starts using the highest damage moves like Hammer Arm and Hyper Beam. His sync move is Rock Impact, which is physical as well. So in a nutshell, his moves are all physical, and his moves increase in potency as you shave off more of his HP bars. Now let's move on to the battle plan.
Disclaimer: I can't guarantee you can defeat Regirock with 12 sync pairs or less, but I can guarantee a victory against Regirock.
Number 1. Clear his first HP bar with debuffs. Number 2. Clear his second HP bar and half of his third HP bar, if possible. Number 3. Clean up the leftovers. Number 1. Clear his first HP bar with debuffs. The idea here is to get Regirock to -6 defense with crits and clear his first HP bar to tank the Rock Slide crit for the next team. Credits to Zinfogo and Hugo for finding the strat, and I just adapted their teams a bit. So the team I recommend is Rosa, Erika and a crit buffer. Rosa and Erika to deal super effective grass damage, and crits to reduce defense for your next team. I'll leave the minimal grids for Rosa and Erika in the description, so take a look later. The list of crit buffers are Torchic, Maylin and Egg Mankey for free-to-play options. If you have Egg Mankey, you can choose to use him for the first round, otherwise use Torchic instead. Your goal here is to clear Regirock's first HP bar and get him to -6 defense. Once you reach his second HP bar, try to lose by tanking his Rock Slide crit. If not, his sync countdown will get reduced further. And that's it for your first team. Next, number 2. Clear his second HP bar and half of his third HP bar if possible. The idea here is to clear as much of Regirock's HP as possible to make it easy to clean up. The team I recommend is Maylin, Solgaleo and Skylar. Maylin for crit buffs, Solgaleo for impervious and super effective damage. and Skylar for gauge, defense, and heal. Vigilance is highly recommended on Maylin as your tank, unless you have Phoebe to replace her. Otherwise, you need to be blessed by RNGs by having your Maylin avoid the initial Stone Age crit, as well as lots of potion RNG with Skylar. Skylar is recommended to be at least 2-5 to get Master Healer 2 for more heals, and at 3-5 to get better RNG for potion. I'll leave a grid in the description as well, so take a look later. Your goal here is to clear his second HP bar and half of his third HP bar if possible, to make cleanup easier. Otherwise, if you only clear his second HP bar, I doubt you can clear it with 12 swing pairs. Lastly, number 3, clean up the leftovers. If you manage to get Regirock to 50% HP, the team I recommend is sufficient for the rest. Wikistrom, Moline, and Torchic. Or Mankey. Wikistrom as a Vigilance tank, Moline for super effective damage, and Torchic or Mankey for crit buffs. After finishing your second team, Regirock has critical hit next. Otherwise, if you have better Vigilance tanks or Jasmine, or units that are tank enough to handle critical hits, you can use them instead. Alternative solution. If you didn't manage to get Regirock to 50% HP, you have to employ different teams. In that scenario, the teams I recommend are Brock, Wikistrom, and Rosa for the third team. Brock to tank crits and potion, Wikistrom for super effective damage, and Rosa for defense and speed buffs. Wikistrom can self-buff himself to get +6 attack and +2 critical hit rate, so he's self-sufficient as a damage dealer. Rosa's speed buffs will greatly enhance your crit gauge as well. And do note that Wikistrom should be in shield form as much as possible when Regirock sinks, to tank more damage, so this run requires a bit of RNG. Your goal here will be to deplete his HP by 50%. And once that's done, we can move on to your next cleanup team. At this point, I doubt we have any tanks left that can tank a single critical hit, so it's time you start employing an Endure tank. In my case, the team I used consists of Kahili for Endure tanking, Moline for super effective damage, and Torchic for crit buffs, if you still have her, that is. Your goal here is to deplete his HP as much as possible, and besides that, if your enemy has 0 sync countdown, insert a trapper in there to tank the sync, and trap Regirock to deal extra chip damage. And for your remaining teams, continue with Endure tanking with Bryce, Clay, or anyone else. Try to deal chip damage with status conditions and weather effects. Or use a high damage sync nuker like Mew to deal maximum damage before Regirock sinks. You can't get a medal with this setup, but I assure you that you can beat that goddamn rock. And that's it for the battle plan. Now it's battle time.
よりそこだ。行け。行くがよい。行け。行け。敗北か。そこだ。面白い勝負だった。
お任せよ。
ここが攻め時だな。
お任せよ。
ここが攻め時だな。まだまだ耐え抜く。力を発揮せよ。まだまだ耐え抜く。
頑張って。
大き
それ。
大きその技だ。力を発揮せよ。行け。
それ。
行くがよい。君を見くびっていたようだ。
頑張って。そんな。
行くがよい。力を発揮せよ。行くがよい。力を発揮せよ。行くがよい。行くがよい。力を発揮せよ。敗北か。
頑張って。
ここだ。
正気です。
ここだ。
とくとご覧あれ。
そこだ。
正気です。
チャンスだ。
攻めちゃえ。
見せてやろう。今がチャンスだ。
攻めちゃえ。
これを選ぶ。
任せなさい。
ポケモン研究の成果じゃ。
行きます。任せて。
今がチャンスだ。
行きます。それ。
今がチャンスだ。
勝機です。勝機です。とくとご覧あれ。